Hello and welcome back to YouMatter. This is session 12, talking about our mistakes and failures and shrinking the shame wizard. Hello, welcome, as I say, to session 12, which means that YouMatter is 1 year old. So happy birthday to YouMatter. And at this point, I would just love to say a huge thank you to everybody who has listened this year, whether you started with us on day one and have listened every month, or whether you've joined us later and caught up on previous episodes. It's really great to know that what we're talking about is helpful and interesting and resonates. And as always, I would love to hear your feedback and any ideas you have for conversations that you would like us to have in our second year. Now, in this episode, I am talking to Felicity Thow, physiotherapist, and very brave physiotherapist who actually asked to come on and talk to me about how we handle our failures in physiotherapy. And she makes this reference to shrinking the shame wizard. If you don't understand that reference, then Felicity will explain all. But don't be nervous. Felicity and I will do the legwork here at picking through this potentially quite difficult topic, but I think it's really important. I think this is something that comes up probably every day in every medical department and organisation across the country, across the world. And as with so many things that we discuss on this podcast, I think airing it is important, getting it out there and getting the discussion going. So sit back, enjoy the conversation, and I will be back at the end. So hello and welcome back to this episode of YouMatter, where I'm really happy to be joined by Felicity Thow. Felicity is a physiotherapist, someone I've got to know quite well over the last couple of years through Physio Matters. She's one of the senior team members of Physio Matters. Felicity also has her own private practice, and she is a member of the Flip and Pain public health campaign. Now, Felicity approached me about this podcast episode and told me she'd like to talk about the shameful reactions that we experience sometimes after our physio failures. And understandably, I got very excited about that topic because that's an absolutely perfect YouMatters type conversation. There is so much talk and literature about failure, and I think all of us will have heard the phrase that, not the phrase, but something along the lines of the fact that failure is good, we should embrace our failures, we learn through our failures, you don't get success without failure, which is very easy to read, speak, buy into. Is it as easy in real life? So Felicity and I are going to chat about physio failures, reactions to them, and we'll talk about the failure in that general sense, but we're really going to try and bring this conversation around to the specifics of how failure impacts or maybe even improves our lives as clinicians. So Felicity, you still up for it?
I've changed my mind, Joe. I think we should talk
okay.
about all the things that have gone right ever.
Yeah.
Just call it Twitter. We'll just call this Twitter, shall we?
A podcast version of Twitter and everything Felicity has ever succeeded at.
Yeah. Thank you for commentating
that. Excellent. Nah. No. It was way too good a topic. All right. So Felicity, on that note then, why on earth did you approach me with that topic? What brought you to that point?
Yeah. So I'd had a morning at work where I work inside a chiropodist. So I sometimes share patients. They get their foot care there. And a lady who I'd seen, partly for something else, but briefly for her Achilles pain, came in and said, hey, you know that Achilles thing that I showed you? I'd ruptured it. My NHS physio said I've ruptured it. So I've been to the walk-in centre. I'm now, it's like a degenerative spontaneous rupture that I had set eyes on and gone, that looks weird, but didn't do anything about it because who knows why. I'll probably reflect on that later. But I had a thought of, oh no, this is happening again. This happens every time I think, oh, I've missed something, I've not diagnosed that right, something has not gone right in this person's care, and it's my fault. This feeling, it's like two simultaneous thoughts. The first one is like, oh, I must seek reassurance for this immediately from everyone that I know, who's going to hopefully tell me that it's not my fault and it was all fine. And they've done massive things, bigger things, tell us all we're all the same. But also the second simultaneous thought is, I can never speak to anyone about this. I should never mention this again. And then my third thought walking home was, this it doesn't keep happening, but every time I do miss something like this, which hopefully is not that often, but I do get this shame response, and I thought, I know who I can talk to about this, and I text you. So yeah, it's a simultaneous thing of, oh, I really want this to make this right. Who can I turn to? And then also, but let's never speak of this again. Particularly not to the patient, let's hope I never see this lady again. And in the end I did, because I was still seeing her for something else, and I apologized for missing it, and she said there's no need to apologize. I thought, well, that's very nice of you to say, but I don't believe it. I didn't say that to her.
Yeah, so it sounds like you didn't go with the not ever speaking about it, because you're now speaking about it quite publicly, so you ditched that one. Did you tell other people about it? Did you tell colleagues, friends?
I talked to the chiropodist who I rent the room from, and to be honest, he's not the greatest person to turn to, because he's not an MSK specialist. So he was very much like, oh, you probably did fine.
No big deal.
Yeah. I purposely didn't go to anyone whose professional opinion I really trust, because they might have said, yeah, you idiot, what were you thinking? That needed investigating at the time.
Do you think that's what would have happened?
I would have heard it that way. Whatever they said, they might have said, "Oh, yeah, I've missed something like that before as well." But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know. But I purposely didn't go to anyone who I thought, oh, they're just going to think, like, what a massive mistake this is.
Yeah, and I think that's quite a common pattern, isn't it? About sharing things generally, not even things that you feel you've done wrong, but maybe even just opinions you have. I've heard a lot of people say that sharing between your professional peers is the most nerve-inducing, shame-inducing process, much more so than speaking to, I guess, someone who you perhaps perceive to have less knowledge than you.
Yeah.
So, go on.
No, I was just going to agree. Sorry.
So let's just say in a parallel universe, you decided to put that on Twitter that same day. So I don't know, a post along the lines of, had a bit of a fail today, missed this Achilles rupture. What do you imagine on that particular platform might happen?
I feel like there's, if I was reading it, I'd probably think, oh gosh, I don't think I'd miss something as obvious as that. Because I think on Twitter, what you read a lot of is, oh, I missed this thing, and it turns out it was the rarest possible, thing that only got X-rayed because they ended up seeing a private person, and blah, 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 blah. And you think, oh, and you end up reading these case studies of things that are very uncommon. You think, oh, wow, brilliant. I've now bolstered my knowledge of, Ebola that masquerades as rotator cuff tendinopathy. You're like, great, that's in my toolkit. But I think reading something, if somebody else had missed this degenerative tendon rupture, Achilles, and granted, this woman was walking around, it wasn't like she limped in with a foot drop, but it did look weird. I think I'd think, I don't think I would miss anything as obvious as that. And I feel it's probably people listening thinking, I don't think I would miss anything as obvious as that. And I would be the same. I would be the same. Whether anyone would write that on Twitter? I don't know. But yeah, it just feels like sometimes you want to separate yourself from these mistakes, from other people's mistakes.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because to be fair, I don't engage a lot on Twitter, but I'm just imagining going into our staff room at work and just saying, oh God, I've just made a bit of a gaffe. I've done this. I can only imagine the response would be, oh, me too. I do stuff like that all the time. And oh, don't you feel just so silly? Would you, I don't know, how do you feel if it was in person to a group of therapists that you knew? Would you think it would be different to that Twitter response?
Yeah, I do. I think a staff room would be much better. I'd still be very wary of announcing it just because shame does that. But yeah, I'd feel much more comfortable with some colleagues that weren't about to retweet it to every manager that I've ever had, and every potential patient that I may have in the future is possibly on Twitter. That feels terrifying.
So if we take this to its extreme, and I get it, and certainly not immune to those feelings, and I'm sure everybody listening is going, yep, me too. If we take that to its ultimate extreme, the sentiment underneath it is, if I make a mistake, if it becomes public, I will never get another job because all my potential employers are going to read this, and all my colleagues are going to think I'm incompetent. Therefore, the only possible acceptable way for me to behave is to get absolutely everything right, always.
Yeah.
Or don't talk about it.
Or never mention the times where it's gone wrong. Yeah. That's the path I'm choosing, yes.
Which is the reality, isn't it? Well, it is the reality if we don't have these conversations, because it is not any reality that you and I know of that everybody gets things right all the time. Unfortunately, we live in a profession, don't we, where getting stuff wrong is, I'm going to say, a daily occurrence.
Yeah. And we probably don't find out about most of them. The people who don't come back, people who don't read book. I always assume when somebody says, oh, I'm feeling much better, or thanks very much, I'm like, do they? Or are they just saying that to be nice? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So nice of them to consider my feelings, but it's okay.
So do you think this started with you, Felicity, or when do you think this started with you? How far back?
Probably the school system, I would say, where I was a head girl and good grades and stuff like that, and I think you do start to equate that kind of achievement with I think you start to equate when you don't do that sort of achievement with something wrong with you, shame. So I do think at school, I loved school and I had a great experience throughout school, but I do think it turned me into a huge perfectionist, people pleaser.
I'm nodding. Same experience, even the head girl thing.
Yeah.
Painful, isn't it?
Were you Mary in the Nativity?
No, and that is a sore point, and I do see
so
that
sorry to bring
as one of my life goals that remains Thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, sorry.
No, perpetually an angel.
Well, no, pretty good.
I'm not Mary, they're not married. So that achievement focus gets set up quite early, doesn't it?
And you don't get any experience. So the thing is had I failed a test, then I would have been an experience of failure and I would have lived to tell the tale and been fine. My friends would still be my friends and my parents would still let me live at home, age 7. But you don't get any experience, so it just becomes a scarier and scarier thing.
The cliff to fall off becomes that much steeper. So I mean, when you hear people talking about failure, you kind of imagine this slightly sort of Pollyanna world, don't you, where if we take it right back to school, a teacher celebrating 20% in the geography test. I mean, that just doesn't happen, does it? What you described there is almost at best I didn't die when I failed a test.
Yeah. I did not become homeless and friendless and dead.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, to be fair, I do hear from my kids a lot of conversation around, so what did we learn from that? I'm just sort of fast forwarding into healthcare and wondering if the stakes then get higher. It's a very loaded question, but and you're at the point where we've got a patient in front of us getting something wrong, even if we get to the point where we're okay and we can accept that we're human and fallible and we're going to, not be on our A game every single day. Unfortunately, that scenario means that patient didn't get the ideal outcome for them, didn't it? Yep. And if we imagine ourselves the other way around, maybe at the doctor's or something, given the choice, you don't want to be there with the doctor on the day that they make a human mistake. You'd rather they were perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the extra layers in healthcare are significant, I think.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's part of it, is if you make a mistake, I mean, it's one thing if you make an admin mistake or something like that, but yeah, you are influencing this person's healthcare. And of course, my thought was, if I'd sent her sooner, might she have had immediate surgery that day? And, might she have long-term consequences of like an Achilles tendon retracting because she was walking around on it for longer than she may have had to? And I don't know. I don't know. But yes, there is people's health, and that influences my practice. Even on my best days, it's really hard to not let anxiety cloud your. I think this is why we, send people for scans when they're not needed, because we're like, what if I am missing something? I feel like you do have to really work hard if you have a level of anxiety to separate that from your actual clinical reasoning. Yeah,
that's a really good point, and that in itself can then perversely detract from the patient quality of care, can't it? If you become too hypervigilant and you're spending time investigating things that don't need investigating, rather than having the confidence to go with your diagnosis and set rehabilitation in process, then perversely the very act of trying not to fail could be the thing that actually detracts from the quality of care. So do you see any universe where, say, at physio school or whatever, if people are listening from other professions at university, ideally, if you could go back, what sort of curriculum focus would you like to make this better at the point where you come out as a clinician?
I read his name, Atul Gawande's book. I think it's the book called Perfect. I might be wrong. He's a surgeon who writes brilliant books, and he wrote about the M&M meetings, the mortality and what's the word I'm looking for? M&M, mortality and
morbidity
meetings. Yes, where people all these doctors gather in a seminar room, and they bring up the people that have died, and we look at what went wrong, and did we miss something, and what could we do better differently? And I think, oh my God, imagine that. I mean, we're talking about missing tendon ruptures, but we're talking about doctors sitting around quite rightly then wanting to do better next time, and let's not miss these things again. Yeah, fair enough. But for the individual concerned, it's harrowing. But I thought, oh my word, can you? I can't imagine being part of those meetings comfortably. I'd love to go and I'd learn from other people, but wow, sharing all that feels massive. But doctors apparently do have these quite regularly in hospitals, which can only be a good thing.
Do you think if you put yourself back in the Achilles situation or other situation it reminds you of, do you think litigation is in your mind, or is it purely what will people think, including this patient?
It's definitely what people think. I almost think if there was litigation involved, I'd be like, well, I fully deserve that. I really would be like well, at least we're all admitting that I'm a terrible physio. You know what I go? So I apologized to this lady and said, I'm really sorry for missing it. And I don't know what I was. I'm glad she didn't, punch me in the face or something. But she was so lovely. And she was very much like, well, you didn't see it, and so it's absolutely fine. I thought that is really nice.
That's really interesting. So the litigation, the much more serious situation, is almost like you're okay with that because, of course, I deserve to be punished. And it sounds like,
and I mean, obviously, I'm not. Like, I prefer not to be. I imagine the stress that comes along with that would be horrendous.
Let's not wish for court case.
Yeah,
but it almost sounds like the same thought is going through your head in relation to other people's opinion. In that, yes, I do deserve to be castigated, and if you're not doing it, then the due process is just not taking place.
Right. Yeah. I even worried about the NHS physio that she saw that did pick it up. I thought, he's going to think, some cowboy private physio has missed this. What should be doing? Just like cupping it, massaging it for 6 weeks, which I hadn't. But obviously, we all assume the worst of each other. And then I thought, well, what did then he realizes it's Felicity Thow from the Physiotherapist podcast that he's been listening to for years, and what a fraud. She's on the flipping pain thing. What did she try and like biopsychosocial a way out of this rupture? What an idiot. Brilliant.
Yeah. Full on shame shower.
Shame shower. And also, I am the center of this. I've lost this lady and all of that. There's almost like I've lost any sense of useful feelings of I did something wrong here. I'm now just in the center of this story.
Yeah.
Not where I should be.
That's a really interesting concept, isn't it? Yeah, that we in doing that, we are, having been in service of somebody else, this has now become an issue entirely centered around us, which I'm not surprised or berating you for that at all. But yes, the whole locus of care has shifted, hasn't it?
I think that's maybe why I feel uncomfortable when this lady then starts saying to me, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it. Because I'm like, what's going on here? I'm trying to, this is not patient-centered care anymore, is it? This is Felicity-centered shame. So
how about if we did have that container where we come in and go, I did this thing this week. So if the reactions of, oh, don't worry, Felicity, you're human, blah, 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 are bouncing off you like Teflon, which sounds like what you're saying, what would be a response that you could actually take inside and go, yeah, okay. What would be a useful response?
I think, let's have a think. Certainly it helps to know that other people have done similar things. I'm the sort of person who beats myself up if I like accidentally go through an amber light and it turns red when it was happening, and I think there's a camera there, and I think, oh my god, I've got to get points on my license, and somebody goes, oh yeah, that happened to me, and it was fine. But you think, oh god, I'm not the only one. So for people to say that professionally, it does help, but it doesn't. I don't necessarily believe that I'm still okay. And I guess it comes down to, I guess, really analysing it and going through the notes and going, why didn't you test this? Or when you did this test, why didn't that spark this thought process? Because that's the only thing that's going to help the next person who comes in with that same thing. Otherwise, you don't improve, do you? We're not addressing it like, oh, it was fine. So I think, actually going through an objective assessment, subjective and objective assessment, maybe my notes, would the thought of it makes me want to vomit with discomfort, but I think that would probably be the only way to do it.
Yeah, and what if in that process you go through and realise, well, actually 99.9% of the time I do that. Something happened that day which made me not. So it's not that I don't have the knowledge and I don't know I should do those things. It's just that because I'm human and I was thinking about my gran in hospital that day, that process didn't happen, rather than it necessarily, okay, if it highlights a gap in your knowledge and there's something you can go away and read and improve on, great. And early in your career you're more comfortable with that, aren't you, because you expect to have those gaps. But I wonder whether that process is helpful, even just to go, okay, I can talk through it, and I obviously do know what I'm doing. It's just that on that particular day something happened.
I think you're right. I do, especially with the Achilles rupture. I mean, you would assume you would see that, but no. No, I think that sounds right.
As opposed to, like you say, most of the social media posts are, in the nicest possible way, brags, aren't they? Even if they're humble brags.
Yeah.
You say, your Ebola thing, I got this wrong, but hey, I discovered something nobody else has ever discovered.
Yeah, the person lived.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why don't we change?
It's really hard, isn't it? Perfectionism and shame and as have you ever watched Big Mouth, the cartoon?
No.
About adolescents. They went, it's about teenagers growing up, and they went to Brene Brown. Bring her in. They went to Brene Brown and said, how can we talk about shame? Like, all of puberty has a character. So there's the puberty monsters, and there's the shame wizard, there's the depression cat, and the shame wizard, you can only get rid of him by talking about him, and this is Brene Brown's influence. So I think, talking about it really is the only way around it. I don't think Twitter's ever going to be the place to do it, because any social media, I think. But those small M&M meetings that that aren't about necessarily people dying, but where you talk to your peers in a confidential place, I guess that would have to be. But talking about it, I think.
Yeah, and ideally in person. Is that how you imagine?
Yeah. I'd be the first one to not say anything in that meeting if I didn't remotely have to.
So you'd need somebody else to come out there and drop the first shame bomb.
So, but like, or for everyone to be like, right, you have to say something here. You just have to share it.
I mean, on the flip side, talking about yourself personally, how comfortable are you with sharing your successes?
Yeah, not very either, actually. That's true. Yeah.
What do you imagine? Similarly, if you were to go on Twitter and say, I just had a great day. I saw this patient. I tried something new, and it went brilliantly, and I was really proud of myself. What do you imagine the response or the thought response might be from other people if you did that?
Oh, that's a can of worms, I feel, because I feel like I wouldn't put that on in case people thought, another success story on Twitter. Well, not that it's another one, but just like, I don't know. It does feel like a humble brag, doesn't it? And that feels like a bad thing. It's not necessarily is, but and I think I also have to personally do this thing where I read that tweet, somebody else has put it on, and I have to go, good for them. Yeah, but it's a real effort to go, good for them, and not be like, God damn, they're never missing anything ever, because social media is such, isn't it? Like, you always have a tidy house on Instagram. So
of course,
wouldn't
it be amazing if people could see that, other clinicians could see those success stories, and then lots and lots of congratulations, and then someone go, I'm really pleased you did that, and I have to be honest, it just induces shame in me when I'm really pleased for your success. And if I'm really honest, these are the range of things that are going through my head at the moment.
Yeah. And is it a competition level thing? Is it a competing thing? Like, is it comparison? Because I feel like a lot of comparison advice is to say, well, good for them, and the same for me. Good. There's not an infinite amount of there's not a finite amount of success.
Yes.
And physio, it's not like, only 50% of people on a day-to-day basis are going to have good physiotherapy, and like, unlucky if all of Twitter got there first. It's not a finite thing, but I think sometimes we think it is, and we assume everyone else is so much better and more skilled, of course.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and we talk a lot about how health professions seem to naturally draw perfectionist characters. There is a bit of a selection thing going on there, but there's a lot of we talk a lot about being team players, but I'm often thoughtful about the fact that there's a bit of a subtext of I'm a team player and I'd rather be on the team that's winning.
Yes. Yeah.
And in the department, I want everyone to succeed, but I really would quite like to be, if not the best, then one of the best clinicians, or perceived as such in that clinic. If we're honest, I think most of us, that's how we feel, isn't it?
Yeah. And I find it fascinating in myself as well, where the narrative is, I'm either a great physio or I'm a terrible physio. I'm never just a physio who's just like making mistakes as a human being. It's the narrative, especially when in the past, when I was newly full-time in MSK, so I'd done my rotations, newly full-time in MSK, in New Zealand on my own, having what was really a mental health, not a great time, built on by a few mistakes with patients. Some of them my mistakes to own, others were perceived mistakes by the person because their GP had said, oh, you should never do that exercise for low back pain. And they thought, well, gosh, why is my physio going with that? And so some things I would change, other things I wouldn't have changed, because at the time that was the reasoning. But yeah, my narrative then was, I'm a terrible physio. I'm a truly terrible physio. Always suspected that this would happen, but I'm a terrible physio, and this is proof. I feel like it's either one way or the other. It's never just.
And then to carry on with that notion, if you're not then going to give up your profession, which that's another thing we might touch on in a minute, I guess the implication is, okay, I'm a terrible physio, so therefore, if I'm going to carry on this profession, I'll carry on being a terrible physio, just bluffing it, and trying to not let people realize I'm a terrible physio. And then every time I make a mistake, that will confirm that, oh my God, it's painful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I was looking up other courses. It was only really probably the fact that I was in New Zealand. It would cost me $1 million. But I was looking up, shall I retrain as a nurse? Shall I retrain as something even more intensely stressful? Just looking up. I looked it up. Never really seriously pursued it, but it was definitely thinking, clearly this isn't for me.
What stopped you?
Antidepressants. I was prescribed citalopram because I went to my GP and said, I'm having all sorts of, I'm having this symptom. And I said to her, if you tell me this is to do with stress, I will 100% believe you, because I feel terrible. And broke down and said stuff. And she said to me, what does your boss say about all of this? And I said, well, my boss says I'm giving myself a hard time unnecessarily. And she was like, look, I run this practice here. If a member of staff was a truly terrible clinician and they said, I think I'm a truly terrible clinician, and they were, and I was thinking, this isn't the job for you, I'd be gently pushing them towards that. Being like, yeah, maybe medicine isn't for you. But the fact that your boss hasn't said that is really useful. So she prescribed me citalopram, and I took one dose and I wouldn't have had any effect. But I feel like citalopram made me a better physio, and that's when I knew it's my mindset that's a problem, not that citalopram is every physio should take citalopram because it makes you a brilliant clinician. No, just probably stop telling yourself you're a terrible clinician because you're depressed. Yeah.
Well, we're grateful to citalopram for
keeping you in the profession.
But joking aside, there is a certain percentage of people that will leave the profession for all sorts of reasons, aren't there? But I do notice a pattern of a certain number of years qualified, and I'm going to say sort of between, it's a huge bracket, around the 10-year mark, let's say. Maybe you've had your young years where, as we say, it's okay to not be great at everything and not to know everything, and that's very freeing, isn't it? And quite an exciting time, and you know that you're learning and you feel like you're on this upward curve, and every time you do get something wrong and someone more senior that you respect fills in that gap for you, you feel like you're moving a little bit up that curve. I remember a period of feeling like I was riding that curve, felt fairly good for a while. Like you, I had a few quite significant knocks with particular scenarios that put some little chinks in that, but I kept going. Then there's this kind of slightly more nuanced, I think you've just described it perfectly, that little downgrade into, I'm just quite a good physio. And for some people, that will never be enough. And I do see quite a lot of people that consider retraining at that point. And I know from conducting one-to-ones with a lot of people that work with me, there's that question, like, how, they don't say it like this, but the subtext is, how do I get every single patient that ever walks through that door better? Tell me, what course do I have to do? What do I have to do to myself? What books do I have to read to ensure that happens? What is it at that point that stops us, to use the cliches, in that upward phase, we're in that lovely growth phase, that beginner's mindset. It's almost like we've run out of road on that, isn't it? It's like, okay, no, now I need to be perfect.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that's, would I have been okay with being just an okay A-level English student? I don't know. Yeah, would I be okay with just being an okay? Well, I think daughter, girlfriend, yeah. Not comfortable with that, are we? And I think you're right. It is the sort of people who go into healthcare sometimes that are the highest. Have the highest expectations of themselves. Yeah, that is a good question.
And I know you and I have discussed the particular thing about intellect as well, haven't we? It's almost like, I think the underlying message, if I get this wrong, basically people are going to think I'm stupid. And if I put this on Twitter, someone is possibly, in my wildest nightmares, actually going to tell me that I am stupid, or just that I am not clever. And if that's your biggest benchmark for success and achievement, that's going to hurt. Yeah.
Oh, there's so many things I'd rather hear than I don't think you're very clever. Like, I'd rather somebody insult my appearance and everything. I don't know. That's definitely one that I think, oh no, that's a vulnerability of mine.
Yeah, if that's been the way you achieved your, to take it to its extreme, if that's where you got your praise and your rewards, and you remember those feelings at school, to take it to its endpoint, you equate it with love, don't you?
Yeah.
My intellect is how I get love.
Yeah. Because you have no experience of as I say, the failed test where I would not have died. The world would not have ended. So she wouldn't have got into that much trouble either, because it's not.
Well, you wouldn't have been head girl, would you? Yeah. Damn that head girl. Should we go back and be the
don't vote for me, actually, guys.
Please, you're just going to screw up the rest of my life. Can I not be head girl?
Taking collection from my future therapy now.
Turn down that position. So, Felicity, should we start a movement then, a failure in physio movement?
Yeah, M&M, but not mortality, but ruptures and.
It does feel, doesn't it, like there needs to be almost multiple platforms for this. So, the staff room conversations, maybe a particular section on social media. A safe container.
Because we're all. This is my second and probably final reference to Brené Brown.
I'm sure it won't be. I'll throw it in.
But I got the Atlas of the Heart book for Christmas, and reading that, and kind of blew my mind when she said, So you kind of assume that the opposite of perfectionism is doing a half-assed job of it, just slapdash, like perfect, fine.
Yeah.
But it's not. She says the opposite of perfection is healthy striving for excellence.
Yes.
I was floored. Because we're all clinical excellence, and we're all trying to strive for that. But yeah, perfectionism actually is an obstacle to that. So, oh my God. So I mean, striving for excellence in a healthy way should not be a thing that physios are not au fait with, but I really don't feel like I am any inkling how to do that healthily anymore.
It sounds like getting ourselves back on that upward curve, doesn't it? Like accepting that there is no point at which you will be perfect. Anybody expects you to be perfect, that there is any universe where you can be perfect in healthcare. And some people do seem to maintain that, don't they, till the end of their days, that clinician that is always learning, always talking. I agree with you, always talking, I think, is key. Never shutting down, never closing the doors, never. I mean, it's a humble position, isn't it? It's never assuming that they've learned it all, never assuming that anybody expected that, including the patients. But yeah, I think you're right about your, was it the shame cat or the perfection cat? I can't remember.
The shame wizard.
Shame wizard, sorry. Wizard cat.
Yeah.
So the way in that cartoon, they just talk to the wizard, is that right?
They talk about it to each other. They talk about the size of their anatomy and their pubic hair and stuff like this. And the shame wizard can't handle when they all expose to each other their own shame wizard things, but otherwise he's just there in the background going, oh, nobody else does this, it's you. You're only you. It's good.
And do you think, you were very honest at the start when I asked you what your response would be if you saw someone else posting about your Achilles thing, and you said your response would be, oh, I'm not sure I'd have missed that. Do you think if we could get more of this conversation going, if we could talk to the shame wizard more, do you feel your own responses might change?
Yeah, I do. I think if I saw this happening more amongst people that I think, gosh, they're amazing physios, but if they were saying it, I'd think, oh, right, okay, we are just human physios. I think that would help no end.
So should we put a call out to all the amazing physios out there?
Yeah, if you got a first and you are also highly respected and do courses, please
tell us your failures.
So,
I think that's the way forward. I think conversation is the only way to talk it down. Let's get a final Brenner quote in. Doesn't she say that shame thrives in a vacuum or something?
Yeah
or in silence.
It does. And it's where perfectionism comes in as well. I've just looked down in the book, the page I opened, shame is the birthplace of perfectionism. That's there you go. Down as well.
That's where it started. So should we change your profile then? So Felicity Thow, private practice owner, member of Live and Pain Public Health Campaign, PhysioMatter's senior team member and founder of the Container for Failure in Physiotherapy. How's that?
Yes. Physio failure. Yes. I thought you were going to say, and average physio.
Oh yeah, and that. Yeah.
Human, middle of the road physio.
It sounds like we also need like a physio AA organization where you stand up and go, my name is Joe, I'm a fairly average physio.
Yeah. That's what will happen in the container every week. Yeah.
I did have a little shiver just saying it then. It's going to take some practice. I think there are some great ideas there. I think some of those, I think we should work on those.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Given what you've said, thank you so much for coming on here and talking about your shameful experiences in physio. And I hope that it may have provided some kind of therapy and reduced your shame wizard.
Yeah, I know. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Felicity. Talk soon.
Cheers.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Felicity Thow, and I hope it has given you food for thought and maybe some ideas that you might introduce where you work as to how we open up these conversations about the everyday failures, the little ones that happen every day, and the big ones that happen in all our careers, if we're honest. I think Felicity is absolutely spot on that talking about these events, getting them out in the open, shrinking that shame wizard is the only way to move forward and to help ourselves move forward as professions from this stifling process of perfectionism. Not process of perfectionism, state of perfectionism that holds us in stasis and doesn't allow us to bring our best selves to our work and our home lives and our whole lives, because the fear of failure is just too great and too stifling. Apologies, I forgot to ask Felicity at the end for her contact details. If you have any interest in continuing this conversation with Felicity, if you've got ideas for ways that we could tackle this issue of talking about our failures and mistakes, or if you're interested in any of her work, particularly with flipping pain or Physio Matters, then you can get hold of Felicity via Twitter. Her handle is @Felicity Thow, THOW. And for all your persistent pain needs, Flippin' Pain, that's FLIPPIN pain.co.uk, flippinpain.co.uk. Thanks ever so much for listening, and I will see you soon for the next episode. Oh, and do not forget, if you are a busy physio caring for people in all aspects of your life, and if you are a clinician who is human enough to be making little mistakes often and occasionally large mistakes, then you are human. You deserve to be heard and to have the opportunity to talk through and work through these things. Essentially, you matter.